All right, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you. How you going?
You too, brother. You too. I'm good. I'm good. Just give me one sec. I'll just make sure I've got this properly set up. Mate, congratulations.
Yeah,
Your
no,
girl
thanks.
dad again.
Yeah, mate. It's been a good couple of weeks. I can't. Yeah, it's been a bit surreal. So yeah, very
Mate,
good.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So, mate, how this works is I've literally read one article on you in preparation for this, and I did it 5 minutes ago. And
Perfect.
we're just going to talk. We're just going to talk. But I've got a lot of things I want to ask you, but I actually, it was quite an interesting article, and maybe it's jumping in too deep straight away.
That's all
But
right.
I just wanted to read this part of it. And it was about you coaching with Shani Williams, I think it was.
Or Shannon
Um,
Parrott. Shannon Parrott.
Shannon, and I thought it was interesting. Maybe it is because Carter knows the pain of unfulfilled ambition. A 76-game Waratah, he never played for the Wallabies. The closest he came was a start for the New South Wales against the British and Irish Lions in midweek fixture in 2013. He scored 2 tries and stood on the turf at Allianz Stadium and realised he was done. What was your thought process? How did you come to that conclusion then?
Oh, look, I think I sort of think like probably you just have a feeling within yourself that you want endings to be happy. I probably feel really good about my Waratahs ending. I'm probably a little bit more regret about the Sydney Uni ending. But you, I think you deep down, when you're not willing to go that extra mile, you want to start taking shortcuts. And I just felt, Czech was amazing. Michael Checker at the time was like, mate, we'd keep you involved in the organisation. But I sort of think with the things to grow, you need things to end. So yeah, I sort of thought what a fitting moment. My brother played against the British and Irish Lions, and I felt like it was just time. It was
Was
time to
it
go.
was it something that built up over time, or was it something that just
No,
clicked to you?
no, mate. I was driving down Moore Park Road, and I've been talking to my mum and my dad about it, and I just thought, you know what, I think it's time. And sort of in the back of my mind, I had a couple of moments where I thought I was on a conditioning drill, and I was always the guy that would compete. Not that I had the most natural ability, but I thought like I maximised what I had. And then,
Yeah.
mate, it was the first time ever I was like, I could actually lose here and not care, or I could take a shortcut and not care. And so that conditioning session was at Newington after, and I just felt like, yeah, it's probably time to go.
How I'm fascinated by this because, like, you and I have had lots of chats, sort of little chats over the
Yeah.
years, and in this article they actually call you a maligned player, which is a very nice way of saying it. And I always saw you as super competitive
Yeah.
because, like, I'd hear people say stuff about you, and then I go, "Well,
Yeah.
have you ever met him? Have you ever spoken to him or had a beer with him?" So I always thought of you as super competitive. But how did you? What was your headspace stepping away from it? Did you struggle originally, or because you still had uni, was that kind of keeping that edge going?
I think probably staying and playing around uni probably was like a bit of a safety net. You probably feel like it's a good opportunity to keep that competitive juices going, and you sort of get your fix of being around the boys and the camaraderie. But I suppose nothing replaces it ultimately at that next level. Like I think it's a bit of a safe place because club rugby is what I've ever known.
Yeah.
And I think I really struggled with it for a while. I probably still do. I guess I get it now through coaching. Coaching the women's sevens team, it's a challenge every day. Obviously, we're trying to do the ultimate in a short period of time at the Olympics. But, mate, nothing replaces that ability to sort of get up for the contest week in, week out. And, I still love club rugby. Don't get me wrong. It was amazing. But yeah, it's what keeps you alive. It's what keeps you on edge. That anxiety and that desire to want to keep getting up and keep getting better, I think, is the key. And when you probably don't want to get any better anymore, it's probably a good sign that it's time to move on to something else.
What in this article as well, it says you regretted maybe the way that you played your character a little bit. Is that
Yeah.
so?
No, you're right.
You're still ringing me on the Zoom. Yeah, is that really how you felt about it?
Yeah, I do, because I think it's, people that probably played with me or played against me and got to know me would have a different side of me, but people who were watching from afar, or people that didn't perhaps get my often confrontational or abrasive side think differently. So I think that caricature, you live up to people's, I guess, perception of you at times. But, you know, I do regret that, because I think there's a different side of me, and hopefully the people that have an interaction with me now, or the coaching or those type of things, have a different perception. But I spend probably 90% of the time trying to break down that perception, and then I guess the other 10% is probably just be genuine who I am, really.
Yeah, I you know, you've sent me some nice messages over the years, and you know, I never thought that, and people that have had interactions with you probably wouldn't feel that. So it surprised me to read that. You just said you regretted how your Sydney Uni career ended. How could you possibly regret it?
Well,
maybe the end of it, but God, you won.
I just feel like we missed out in the finals in the last year when Tim Davidson was coaching. So for me, like, failure and success is pretty black and white. You either win or you lose. And I was talking about it. We've been sort of just reflecting on our own. You know, when you have a child, you start reflecting on your life, and I guess as a parent, how do you want to be perceived? And I sort of was saying to my wife, I have a genuine disdain for losing. Like, I think, I don't know whether it was growing up in country New South Wales or being the youngest brother, but something inside myself would build this up to being that my only measure of success would be whether I won or lost on a weekend. And that's the beautiful thing about rugby. It's probably why I'm really enjoying Stan, because I can flick between 4 or 5 club rugby games simultaneously, and everyone goes to me, do you not follow the game? And I watch it intimately, but I'm really enjoying that, because for me, every Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock your week was either a success or a failure. So for me, you know, I just have this incredible, I just don't like losing, and perhaps I was a bad loser.
Are you like that in all aspects, or just sort of rugby?
No.
Do you have to win when you play board games and ping pong?
No. I'm learning that being a parent of a 7-year-old, you actually got to sometimes lose in backyard soccer or stuff. But no, I sort of feel like, I have to win. Like, I just want to win, and whatever I do, I want to be really good at. So if I'm not very good at something, I'll very rarely pick it up. I try and sort of, that's how I suppose that what makes me tick as a person.
Yeah, because like, to me, looking at you, you're a super high achiever in everything you do, and I think the common thread with high achievers is that competitive nature in you know, not just sport but life. Like, you're competing with yourself in studies, and you want to win at everything you do, really. Is that absolutely fair?
Yeah, no, it is, and it's probably what drives you, I think, to have purpose every day, and you sort of measure your life through wins and losses, and success. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the joys of probably going into the role that I've gone into is that individual success and athletes achieving stuff is a really good purpose. So it's probably not about me anymore, but hopefully you can channel that drive and passion into helping others do something that they want to do in their life that's meaningful. That probably definitely is what drives me. And I think anyone who's been really incredibly successful in any facet of life, there's those periods of time where you've got to work really hard, and I think you've got to have a purpose to that. Otherwise, it's just meaningless, and you probably get lost in the grind or the losses. Whereas I think if you've got something genuine that drives you, then being unsuccessful, having periods of stagnation are part of the process, really.
I want to talk to you about coaching. I've just jumped into coaching, and I want to be very selfish and pick your brain on that. But I got to ask, what? Damn it, these podcasts are just an excuse for me to ask people questions, really. Tell me about the impact Sydney Uni has had on your life.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously the greatest thing that I'd ever done, really. I suppose I went there as a young guy watching my brothers play. So this was sort of 95, 96 when the club was going to be relegated. I was a 12 or 13-year-old. And I spent the best part of the next 25 years sort of following every success of theirs or trying to help contribute to it. So it's a fantastic place. I've got some of my best friends I'll ever meet in life from there. I met the most incredible people. I got a degree or two from there as well. And so it holds a very sacred place in my heart. And I think, it's all my family. My dad still coaches fourth grade up there. And I think ultimately, those memories will get stronger as you go throughout life, and you remember the moments and stuff and the people that you've met for sure.
Do you think you would have played for the Waratahs if you didn't go to Sydney Uni?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I think that I was really fortunate. I met some incredible S&Cs along the time there in Marty Harland, and I think just that opportunity to be challenged physically and learn from good coaches. So, I probably would have played rugby league if I didn't go to Sydney Uni, honestly. I probably would have gone to probably Gordon for a while and then tried to challenge myself elsewhere. So, yeah, I think for it's it'd be a miss for me not to sit there and say that I think Sydney University contributed enormously to my success for sure.
What about the mental side of the game? Did you ever do any work on that specifically?
Yeah, we spent enormous amounts. There's like Lisa Stalaker, who was a famous Australian women's cricketer. Her dad, Haren, was a sports psychologist, and he spent a lot of stuff in those early sort of 2000s. And then Todd Loudon, who's now down at Souths, was director of rugby, and we spent an enormous amount of time on the mental side of the game. Like, I know people speak about the physical preparation and Sydney University's elite development programs and scholarships, but I guess just being exposed to how you prepare for games and big games, and I felt like that was a really important part, particularly in those sort of 2005. We lost it was split into Shoot Shield and then Twisby Cup. So the first part of the year we lost that famous final down at Rat Park where Cliffy Parley comes on and then Pete Owen scores a try, and so that was a really good preparation for the back end of the year. And so then in big games, I think at the time we won 9 grand finals and I lost 4, so it's sort of 2 Shoot Shields, so 1 to Eastwood in 2006, 1 to Warringah, and then 1 to Eastwood and then 1 to North in 2016. But the point being about that was just mental prep for big games and how we prepared to play. And Tim Davidson, of course, was such a wonderful captain, and just the I guess the technical and tactical parts of big games, but getting people up emotively to play in big moments was probably something that we learned along the way.
I've got to ask, do the 4 finals that you lost eat away at you more than the feeling you got from winning 9 finals? Does that still eat away at you?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think 2011 we were probably Pierre Holler knocks out Daniel Halangahu, so we were probably that Eastwood with the best side all year. We lose in extra time. 2016, I thought we just probably didn't quite execute our best game, and North, coached by Simon Cron, did a really good job. If I had my time again, I would prepare totally differently in that week. I think that you get caught in the moment. 2006, we got a charge down against Eastwood, so that was a bit frustrating at TG Milner. And then 2005 against the Rats, I think momentum. You learn momentum is really important in big games, and they obviously had the home crowd down at Rat Park, and then Cliffy Parley got on a roll. So, and then they set piece probably took us apart late in the game. So I suppose you learn, if I was ever going to coaching, you'd learn that momentum and set piece is important. And then just tactically, a few nuances in grand finals are important, how to, I guess, change that momentum of ebbs and flows.
What would you change in 2016 for the Norths one?
Oh, I just think we probably went away from, set pieces important. Their scrum, we had a couple of moments early on in the game, and then at the back end of the game, their scrum probably got dominance. Substitutions, and then probably, I made a couple of errors. I had a handling error on half-time, which was close to the line. I think Nick Palmer got a turnover. They're big moments in big games, and I think, that's probably the one thing I'd reflect on. And I think as well, probably having an end point, like probably should have walked away after that. And so had that been my last game ever and you declare that and you state that, then I think it's probably a little bit of a different week for you. So probably I was disappointed in my own performance. But, that's disappointing, I suppose.
I'm just so interested to hear all this because to me, I've never met anyone that's won as many rugby tournaments as you. But I guess that's why you did win so many. What was it like playing for the Waratahs? Coming from country New South Wales, what was that like?
Yeah, it's just a dream come true. And I know that's a cliche, but I remember my first game and I can remember my first moment of Super Rugby. And there was a long break between my first game with my first cap and then when I played Super Rugby. But just the feeling of walking left out the change room and down the SFS, the old SFS, which is getting renovated, which is not too far from where we are now at Moore Park. But I was just electrifying. We get 38,000 people and you're playing with people like Phil Waugh and Dan Vickers and Lottie Takiri. yeah, it's the stuff that dreams are made of, and it's just electric, you know. And it's funny, I say to people, it's almost easier to play at Super Rugby than club rugby because everyone does their job, and then you just do your role, and you're able to fulfil that role, and everyone knows their job, so it's quite easy. It was not easy, but you know what I mean. Like it's easy.
I know what you mean, yeah.
So yeah, amazing, and a great pride around that, and play with people like Cliffy Parlew and you know, some greats of the game who will forever, Luke Burgess will forever remain very close to me. So yeah, it was an amazing time.
Looking back on it, were there any moments that stand out to you?
Yeah. There's a couple of, obviously your debut against the Hurricanes, Super Rugby final in 2008 against the Crusaders in Christchurch. We were the first Waratahs team in 87 years to win at Auckland at Eden Park in 2009. But just the team. In 2010, I think we had to beat the Hurricanes by a bonus point in the last round to make the semis when we did it. So we were just a team that I think we made 5 final series along the way, but was always be up for the big moments when it mattered. And I felt like we'd have some losses along the way and we'd get ourselves into some tricky spots, but we'd always get ourselves out of it. And yeah, they're the things you remember the most.
Mate, I'm going to start asking a few coaching questions. How did you get involved with the cricketers? How did that all come about?
Yeah, so a very close friend of mine, Brad Haddon, his daughter fell ill in sort of late 2013, 14, and he rang me up and just said, "Listen, mate, I'm thinking of something different. I'm not in the Australian team. Can we do something different?" So yeah, we just started training. I'd been involved in Sydney Uni cricket a little bit, but I'd known him a long time. So I started training, and this is the story. He obviously made it back to the Ashes in 2013 and 14. So outside of Mitchell Johnson, I think he was probably Australia's best player, and then he won a World Cup. And then from there, I sort of caught up with Sean Abbott and Nathan Lyon, who have had a relationship now with 8 years coached. And then I got involved in the City Sixers, and then got involved with people like Ben Manenti and Harry Manenti. And then I was really fortunate to be involved with the Sydney Cricket Club, who just won their premiership for the first time last weekend. So, I grew up playing cricket, but I find it really, it's really quite easy for me to be an S&C cricket. With rugby, I tend to get quite emotional and attached to it and think very deep about it. Whereas with cricket, I just come from a very, removed position. So, I love working with them, but probably just think differently about cricket S&C as opposed to probably how I think about footy stuff.
Did you have to do? I'm sorry, I'm really interested in this. Did you have to do much research into some of the physical side of cricket, or was it, you looked at a couple of bowlings and thought, oh, that makes sense? Because I've seen some of the stuff you do. It's a little bit. I don't know if it's left of centre or what, but
no, it is. I think. I just think the amount of load that goes through a fast bowler's lumbar spine, so flexion and rotation, I've sort of thought, well, ultimately to have a good run up, it's like a middle distance runner, and then there's almost like a triple jump position in there, and then flexion and rotation. So I probably just thought differently about it. And then one of my cricketers, George Ferrer, who's playing professionally in England, he'd had a few injuries over time in his lumbar spine, and so then you start sort of problem solving, and then you work out, I suppose, what formula works differently. It's quite an incredible sport, like so skill based, but athletically, the demands on a bowler, particularly at Test cricket, are very challenging. And then, to work with Nathan, that was pretty amazing, really, to be through his career. I sort of don't talk technically about them very much, but just sort of give them opportunities. They'll talk about how they feel at the crease and what they need to feel better at, and then obviously Sean through what he's been through, and now how he's come out the other side and his performances. Get back into the one day side is pretty incredible.
When you stopped at uni, you started your business, and did this just flow on from there?
Yeah,
so it came about.
So 2014, I sort of didn't know what I wanted to do post rugby. I suppose, like many people, sort of had a couple of degrees, but was not really sure. And so that's pretty much how it started. It basically started doing some one-on-one coaching with the cricketers, and then it built, and then got into consultancy, and then got involved with some teams. And then that was pretty much the and then a couple of English cricketers, county cricketers, when the pre-COVID era was around, they would come out every summer and do some work with me. Built some incredible relationships and really enjoyed it. and then got involved, as I said, with Sydney Cricket Club this year. So, it's been a bit different for a rugby player to be involved in cricket, and they certainly think differently of you, but I hopefully can provide some insight of different skill sets that perhaps they don't get in their own environments.
So when you finished playing, because I remember you were S&C at uni for a year or two.
Yeah. So I did some high performance work with Sydney Uni sort of around 16, 17, and then left at the end of 17. So at the end of 17, went out on my own. So that was 2018. And then at the end of 2018, got a call from Johnny Manenti saying, mate, I'm keen. We'd had a relationship for 20 odd years, but I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to rugby. I think that it just had consumed my life for so long, and it was probably time I invested in my family and other things. And then, I was very fortunate now, looking back on that, to get back involved with the Sevens, where I've been since 2019.
So what's your role with the Sevens? So just to clarify, you're the Aussie Women's Sevens team?
Aussie Women's Sevens team, so head of athletic performance. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For someone who was never very athletic, what does that mean? Not you. What does that mean?
So I manage the physical performance side of things. So I work with sort of S&C, physios, rehab, and the doctor, and then Johnny to provide, I guess, the best physical performance program for the girls. So, it's been really, really enjoyable. They're an incredible group. They're obviously defending gold medalists, and they're wonderful athletes. Like, I say that to people, like, they love running, they're incredibly powerful, they love jumping, and they love lifting weights. So, and they've got good skills. So, really fortunate to be able to work with them, and hopefully we were able to get a good result in Tokyo 2021 in 102 days.
So I was actually thinking about this today. So the Australian women's sevens team is probably the only, I'm sure, I know some rugby league teams and there's some cricket and AFL, but in reality, they're the only full-time women's professional sporting team in this country. Is that fair? So
that's a good question. I actually am not sure. I'm sure other sports might be semi-professional, professional, but yeah, I believe so. Maybe they are one of the true centralised models, perhaps. Yeah.
What I'm getting at is, so you're really coaching the cream of the crop of athletes, female athletes in this country, and obviously they're already fit. Most of them would already be strong. How do you get more out of them?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to the group, they're pretty intrinsically motivated. I think we've got 8 or 9 returning from Rio that won gold. And you're right, they're absolutely athletically at the peak of their powers, with their touch football background, some of them have come through the development systems where they've played rugby. So by no means am I reinventing the wheel, but you're just trying to challenge them around incremental improvements that get a little bit faster, a little bit more powerful. I think the World Games changed since Rio, so that was 5 years ago. A lot of the programs are now centralised. It's a pretty competitive sport. America have done a great job with talent recycling, so people that played other sports have dropped into their program. Canada have been very strong for a period of time, and New Zealand obviously have always been 1 or 2 in the world. So I guess it's more around challenging them every day, around trying to be a little bit better and achieve the ultimate, really. But again, it's a pretty easy job considering how good they are and how motivated they are.
So it's not a case of, okay, you've got a 5-minute Bronco, we've got to get you 4.5-minute Bronco.
Oh, no, we squeeze the lemon.
Is that how you work it?
We squeeze the lemon pretty hard. Yeah, we do. We do around speed and power and, what's your personal best and can we improve that and can we make you better footy players and try and integrate it a lot. I'm very fortunate. Johnny Manenti and James Stannard are the coaches, and they've got great rugby brains, and Johnny's just got a great vision of the game. So he's got a pretty clear mandate to me around what he wants. And then, the challenge has been not playing for 16 months during COVID. So you just learn about people and human beings and how do you keep them motivated, and there's no such thing as a plan because it tends to change every week. But that's been really good because I think you just learn to be adaptable and a bit more agile. Excuse the pun, but you still probably learn how to measure success in these times and have your small wins, but also I suppose keep in mind the end goal as well.
What did the 2020 season, for lack of a better term, look like for the girls?
Yeah, look, that is trained. Like, to be fair to them, I've never met a program. I've never met people that just applied themselves. So some girls went and played NRLW, or we played 15s in the Jack Scott Cup, or they went and played sevens tournaments around Sydney. But for better of the word, they haven't played as a team since Sydney Sevens January last year. So it's been very challenging. I think Johnny Menenti and Scotty Barn have done a great job in managing the program and keeping people, motivated and stimulated to keep performing at their best.
What did you learn about coaching yourself in 2020?
I think it was the making of me. I think ultimately, in my role, you can sit back and you can write programs and you can oversee stuff and look at GPS data and make assumptions. But during our COVID time, Johnny and I coached 6 hours a day. So it was effectively 2-on-2 or 1-on-1 coaching, 20 metres apart in the park, and we just coached girls. And I think it just taught me, I think I'd become a very lazy coach and lacked probably detail and purpose. And then it just taught you about how to motivate people and how to stimulate development. So that was probably the biggest thing for me. And looking back on it, I loved every minute of it, and probably regained a passion for the industry. I think you can become you're either a manager or an administrator, or you're a coach. And I certainly love the coaching side of things, and seeing them develop and setting, goals and seeing them achieve that, which is fantastic. Because ultimately the best thing about being a rugby S&C is seeing transference. We talked about it for years in the game around the Wallabies. How do we transfer, or, for better of a word, how do you see people improve physical qualities and then in the game? And that for me was probably the buzz I got out of it. And Johnny was great. Johnny was on board, and we helped see girls grow, and we've got a really good young group. And I think the one thing, whatever happens in Tokyo, the women's team will be incredibly strong for many years. So next year's Commonwealth Games and World Cup, they will be incredibly strong for years to come. So seeing those girls develop was really rewarding and fulfilling.
When you talk about goal setting, do you put demands on the girls, or do you encourage them to set their own demands?
No, set their own demands. Ultimately, it's got to come from them. So we're sort of trying to just facilitate, where does that look like? What does that look like? What do you want to achieve? And then sort of working back from that. But ultimately, it's probably got to be intrinsic within them. I don't think external goals ever work in rugby. You know what I mean? You get the coaches that get up there and say, this is what we want to achieve, but it's a lot more powerful when a playing group or an individual says, this is actually what I want to do. And that's probably what I learned from cricket, being exposed to some of those incredible high achievers. The ones that have got real purpose and drive tend to be the ones that are the more successful ones, because success is never linear. If you map it over a career, everyone has peaks and troughs. But those that are able to keep going and finding self-improvement and purpose tend to be a little bit more successful over time. So it was more around how the girls, I suppose, felt that what they needed to do. But again, it's easy to say that when there was 12 months, when the Olympics were postponed for 12 months is a long time. So trying to break that down again, and Johnny, to be fair to him, was incredible. He just speaks about 4-week blocks, and you're going to have all these big, spreadsheets of, cycles and goals, but we sort of broke it down to 4-week blocks, and then celebrated that success and reviewed it, and then sort of kept trying to change it, but ultimately get them ready for 12 months. That's probably what I'm very fortunate that he was, around, and that was something he's obviously been involved with club rugby himself as a player, and then at Eastwood and been the cornerstone of their success for long periods, and then with the Sevens. So he's seen a lot of that stuff, and it's a good experience for me, because I think you can get, as a player, you think about a shoot shield, even that's quite long. And if you don't break the moments down and celebrate them. And Tim Davidson said, you asked earlier about what do we regret about 2016. I think we pushed them incredibly hard, but I think we should have, in retrospect, broken up the season. And in club footy, when people get stale, going to the pub and having a few schooners was probably a better option than, physically challenging people. So I think being able to get people along the journey and seeing that there's moments to get away and enjoy it and refresh and then go again. Yeah, that's probably been the big thing I've learned.
What's the difference between coaching men and women?
Well, to be fair to our girls, they're probably the best athletes that I've ever trained. But I think it's the attention to detail and the language you use. So you've got to be very specific and explain things. I think sometimes I get quite colloquial with my language, and they'll be first to pull that apart. So yeah, attention to detail and standards, around that stuff. So that's a good reflection for me. But there's not much difference, mate. Like our groups, they're incredibly good at what they do, and they're quite easy to train. But definitely just from a definition of drills or how I explain things or my coaching cues and stuff around movement that's the big thing that I've noticed.
So that's been a good thing for your coaching?
Yeah, definitely has been. Definitely has been. I think, that explicit versus implicit and intrinsic versus extrinsic drill. So I think being able to set up those type of things within training or constraints to get that outcome. But they're incredibly competitive. So that's the one thing that gets misconstrued, and our group want to be the best. So setting tasks where they have to compete can often bring the best out of them.
Mate, I haven't coached a lot of women, but I've been invited to do some scrum sessions, and obviously do a lot of scrum coaching with men, and I actually find the girls a delight to work with because they don't have this assumed knowledge. What does this fucking guy know? And they listen, and if it makes sense, they'll go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. That open book and that eagerness to want to learn and be better. And I was fortunate enough to be involved with Bronte Campbell, the swimmer, and what she taught me in a short period of time was just she's been an elite swimmer for I think 18 years now. But just the discipline and attention to detail around their training really blew me away, and it was a really good reminder around I guess what the human human athlete is truly capable of. So, look, it's been something I've really loved. To be honest with you, it's been, exceeded my expectations and even more.
Man, I'm going to jump around a little bit because that's how my brain works. Have you seen the test on Amazon?
No. Yes. Yep.
So I'm not a cricket guy, but I was absolutely enthralled by that. And it made me realise what an intense mental and physical game cricket is. Tell me about someone like Nathan Lyon, because I look at him, and particularly in that show, he's the absolute top of his field. And, I'd hate to think how many days away they are a year, but what's it like working with someone like him?
Yeah, he's the GOAT, I suppose. But he has the same challenges that we all have. But what he's got is an incredible understanding of what he needs to do to perform well. So he's played 100 tests or 500 days of test cricket. When you think about that, in rugby terms, if you play 100 tests, you're pretty nervous, I guess, for 100 moments in your life or pre-game, whereas he's probably had 500 days of that. And as you said, they travel the world, they're away from their families. And then they obviously, he's obviously taken 397 test wickets. I think that's third all time, but he obviously gets heavily scrutinised. So just my admiration for that, to be able to tolerate that. It's almost like a surgeon. Obviously, it's not life or death what he is doing, but that ability to perform. And, off spin isn't leg spin. Off spin's a different craft, and it's hard in Australia. Obviously in India, they've had some very famous off spinners in Murali Dhiran, but for Nathan to be able to do his craft in Australia and do what he's done is just incredible. So, real clear purpose around what he's trying to achieve, and then just the technical skill, technical mastery of what they do. And I've said it to a few people. I had one regret on my footy career. I wasn't very skillful, but I don't think I worked hard on my skills. Like if you threw 10 extra passes at the end of training, or you see a hooker throw 10 line-out throws, the skill acquisition in cricket is just unbelievable, the amount that they practice their skills. Like the amount that he would bowl time and time again, and he'll get a bowling coach down from Queensland, John Davison, and he practices that, and he practices his delivery stride and a few nuances around that. You're not surprised that they're so successful, but it also probably is surprising how much more skill they do than others, like almost like a basketball shooter. So, that's probably the things that have stuck out in my mind. But he's just such a knockabout bloke when he's not training. So I sort of try, and as I said to him, my job is to create an environment where I can just make him feel as comfortable as possible and be a support through whatever. And then we work on what we think really works for his bowling, and throughout different stages we might challenge some certain things, but it's been pretty consistent for a long period of time.
I was talking to Michael Hooper about this, and I think it would apply to cricket probably more so because it's not an 80-minute game; it's a 5-day game, and that money is a nice motivation, but you can't do something like that just for money. I don't think, and I'm sure cricket is significantly better than rugby, but there's got to be something up here that drives him.
I think that's a genuine love of the game, but I think it is genuine seeing how great you can be at your craft. It's an opportunity to show your skill or showcase your skill time and time again. And I think that's what inspires them around that, is that self-improvement. I think I've had a little bit to do with Steve Smith, but just their desire to want to be better. I've never seen anything like it in my time around skill acquisition and stuff. It's pretty incredible. And sometimes around physical attributes as well. That's probably something that's short of.
It's very interesting, the evolution of cricket from like the Shane Warne era, well, at the start of his career, to now where they're all basically athletes.
Yeah.
How's the next 100 days look for the Aussie Sevens team?
Yeah, look, it'd be nice for us to play some trials or games before the Olympics.
Are there any games, or is that to be confirmed?
No, it's to be confirmed, but we were hopeful, obviously, of being able to play some form of games pre. But it just involved heat camps, and it involves us just sharpening the sword, really. We probably had a couple of opposed stuff the last couple of weeks, and the girls have probably looked the sharpest they've looked in 3 years. So we've got a few people in rehab that need to come out, but it's just about us getting cohesion and building combinations and confidence. So it's going to be the hottest Olympics in history, so we've got to deal with the heat in Tokyo, but just building systems and processes. And they've done an enormous amount of physical work over the last sort of 12 months. So now time for the coaches to have that opportunity to I suppose, build what is their best combination. And then, it's a 3-day tournament. And then, obviously, as you progress through those days, it gets more and more important. And hopefully come day 3, we're still there or thereabouts at the back end of the day.
You mentioned heat camps. What does that involve?
It's pretty brutal. Like, it's obviously the conditions, I think 36, 37 degrees, significant amount of humidity. So just trying to prepare them for that climate. We'll obviously leave Australia in July where it could be winter. So I think every team across the world is trying to work out how do they, and in a COVID environment with all the quarantine regulations, what does it actually look like, and what does a normal Olympics look like? So, we want to be the most skillful and I suppose fastest team or repeat speed team. So, that's what we've got to be able to apply ourselves in the heat. And that's what we'll try and work on.
So you're going to go to Darwin or something?
Well, we sort of maybe, mate, we've been playing around with lots of different things. Johnny's really good at that stuff around his planning and prep. So how do you get heat acclimation in the winter of Sydney? That's to be confirmed. But we're certainly trying to push the envelope around a few things around that, just to make sure that we're physically and mentally prepared for that.
How's it going to look like when you're in? It's Tokyo, isn't it? When you're in Tokyo, is it? I imagine it won't be a proper, you're there for the 3 weeks type thing, or fly out?
No, I think it'll be fly in, fly out. So that's every second day the I suppose the plan or the rules and regulations change. But that'll be a bit disappointing. It won't be perhaps a normal Olympics, but we're very grateful considering what's going on throughout the world to be able to go. So just to be able to go and have an Olympics will be fantastic. But I believe it'll be very different to perhaps what it was like in Rio and obviously London before that, for sure.
Mate, you get to go. Obviously, they don't limit.
No, I think we'll go. We'll get to go. So, I think hopefully by the time we get there, my role will effectively be done. We'll be in a taper or we'll be just in game mode. So then it's sort of switches to helping them recover and being a support as much as possible so they can prepare to the best of their ability. But by the time we get there, absolutely the physical work will be done.
Mate, I won't keep you too much longer. I'm really grateful for this.
That's all right.
Talk to me about your coaching influences.
Wow. That's a really interesting thing. I mean, I suppose I've touched upon him already on the podcast, but Johnny Manenti's been his man management skills, but his ability to, I suppose, believe what the winning formula is. So foresee what the best, what does a gold medal winning performance look like and what do we need to do to get there has been really, really insightful for me. I worked with Trevor Bayliss at the Sydney Sixers, who was the England World Cup cricket coach, and he again was a great guy around creating an environment in the change room where England one day side just believed that it didn't matter. They could play with such freedom that they'd eventually win. So that you see these guys that would be coming to the environment and they'd have this courage and character to play shots and really take the game away. So that was a really interesting way of seeing how you've got to be able to build trust and as a coach wear the losses, but instill that belief in players to play with their natural freedom. And they obviously did that when they won the World Cup. So those two probably around that stuff. And then, there's some, I was very fortunate at Waratahs to be coached by some great people, so Ewan McKenzie, Michael Checker, I even had backs coaches like Scotty Bowen, Todd Loudon, Chris Malone. I think you learn a lot from a lot of coaches, and I think that's the key is over your time. If you're smart, you develop your own ideas, but you pick and choose and take stuff from a lot of different coaches and then use that eventually. Because I think a lot of coaches in Australia don't get the opportunity, but they're great coaches. There's a lot of good coaches at club rugby that have insight. And I think when you look back on your career, you realise there's little nuances that you pick up along the way. I sort of feel like I've probably been able to pick up lots of stuff along the way and shape into what I sort of believe. And then in the S&C space, unfortunately, there's some great people around Rugby Australia that give you ideas and support and mentor you. So, I'm only 38, so I'm very much, I thought I knew a lot when I retired at 30. I can tell you I don't know much at all. Like, I'm serious. And I mean that you sit there and just go, my God, I've got a long way to go. But I think you probably don't become a good coach till you're 50 or 55. And I talked to Daniel Halangahu a lot, who's at the Blues as the assistant coach now. And, you sort of, that open growth mindset, I think, as a coach is important. When you start thinking you've got the answers, then you don't really. And I think Craig Twentyman, who was involved with the women's sevens when they won, who's now in the Auckland Warriors, he's been a great person to balance ideas off around that. But yeah, as I said to you, mate, I sort of try and pick up bits along the way, and it's certainly got a long way to go. But I suppose that's why you love coaching, isn't it? You try, and as long as you feel like you're getting better, it's like a player. When I'm sure you start out in the shoot shield, you don't, I guess, to see how your career would turn out, but you sort of hopefully get better each year. And that's probably, I guess, my mentality or mindset around the coaching.
It is a good way of looking at it. Something I've noticed, like I've literally been coaching like just this year, is you learn just as much what to do as what not to do.
100%.
And both are very valuable. And, I've made mistakes already, and I feel like opening up to that and admitting it. And I don't think you ever stop making mistakes.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you want to become a price, and you're very keen to stamp your authority as a young coach, and this is what I believe in, and this is what I think. But then as you get older, you realise that I suppose being able to assess the situation in that any given moment and what's best in that time is probably the most important thing, not what your technical or tactical knowledge is. So I think that's the great coaches. They're able to shape people to be able to basically coach themselves. As a coach, you make yourself redundant, and then you're just a guiding figure. But the great coaches know when to come in, chip people around being better, let them take ownership, make them be accountable, and I suppose work through that as well, and plus also improve them. And I think that's your job as a coach, is to create an environment where people get better. And that's all we can do is do your role and allow people to be better. And if you can do that, I think you're probably on the path to being better as a coach, but also as a group. It's easier said than done, and there's a fair few cliches in that, but I certainly think reflect on my career. The great coaches were the ones that inspired you to pursue being better and made you feel comfortable if you made a mistake.
I've got a couple more questions, mate, then I'll leave you alone.
That's all right.
We talked about Johnny Minetti, magnificent human being, and I've seen he's put his hand up for the TARS job. I actually hope he doesn't get it, because I think it would be, I'm going to be careful how I word this, but I like him too much. Do you keep an eye on what's going on at that sort of level?
Yeah, you do, but I think you become quite, I suppose, insular in what you focus on, like your own ecosystem environment. And for us, we've got 102 days to the Olympics, and that's all sort of I think about. And then after that, whatever happens sort of happens. I think, I'm an ex-Waratah, so you care about the team and you want them to be successful, and you just want Australian rugby to be successful. Ultimately, you want people to be coming and filling the stadiums and talking about the Wallabies and being excited. I think that's what, and I work for Rugby Australia and I'm passionate about the game. Otherwise, if I wasn't passionate, I probably wouldn't be in the job. So, you want people to be successful. And there's a lot of good people around Australian rugby at the moment, and hopefully, people can see that belief and faith, and we can get a good result with the Wallabies and any of those teams. So, but mate, in terms of the day-to-day stuff, like, I'm probably busy enough trying to manage my own backyard. Like, I don't think you can take the eyes off that prize. So for me, that's probably where my focus lies for now.
You've had a lot of success, but there has been some failures in there. How have the failures shaped you for future success?
Well, I definitely think the failures shape you more than your success. I think it forces you to reflect on where you went wrong, but it exposes you to realise that you don't like losing, but it's a part of life, and it's part of the risk that you take whenever you try and win something. You learn the value of family and good support networks and people standing around you and supporting you, and you can't ever take that for granted. Like, we're not performing miracle or life-saving surgery. You're involved in sport, and I think that your relevance as a sporting coach, it is important, but there's other things as important as well, like your family and your friends. So I think being that perspective is probably what I've learned from the losses. I think it forces you to reflect as a coach. Like, you can't blame players and go, "Oh, we lost because of that." Like, ultimately, you've got to look at yourself first and foremost.
I like Eddie Jones' approach with that. When they lose a game, he always says that I didn't coach well enough, which I think is a really interesting approach.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is, because I think it's then, you're starting to look at, okay, what did I do in the week? Like, there's the tactical, technical, physical and psychological aspects of the game. Where did I, or what did I contribute to that? Like, those four pillars, how did I create that environment? Who did I put in positions to make decisions around that stuff? And sometimes the game, like, there's so many great coaches in AFL and rugby league, and what it's forced me I've learned as I've got older, if you look at it, is that the margin for error is so small. Like, every year, every team has a great off-season. You might have one or two injuries to key positional players, and you might finish 8th instead of 4th, or you might finish 4th instead of 1st. But there's still the person that finished 4th is a great coach. So for me, you look at longevity in the game, and you look at a Bellamy or a Bennett or a Ricky Stewart or some of the AFL people, and you just realise, well, John Longmire at the Swans, for example, they obviously haven't had 2 good years, but they've come out and they've come 5-0, and you just realise how calm and measured they must be when they're not at their top and when they're not having success. And then obviously, I think being able to see how the game trends are going, like, what does a winning performance look like in NRL when the rules have changed, or a few nuances, and that's probably the love of it for me. I probably love that part of coaching more than I love playing, is that now I'm involved in it. It's like, in a playing career, you've only got a short amount of time, so you always feel like every weekend's the most important, and you've got to make it now, otherwise you'll never make it. Whereas probably as coaching, it's like, well, I've probably got 30 years ahead of me to learn and make mistakes, but they probably take it slowly. So that's probably what I've learned from the success, is probably, not grieve your losses like a child, sort of manage them with grace like an adult, and think, well, wow, hey, this is a moment in time, and yes, it hurts now, but I'll learn a lot from that, and then I can build onto that. So yeah, that's probably what I've probably thought back around it, and probably the most important thing is probably really not thinking about the future in that moment. I thought when we made the Super Rugby final, hopefully there'll be another one, but there was never another one until the Waratahs won in 2014 without me. So being able to stay in that moment, I know, again, I'm not Zen Buddhist here, I'm saying, but being able to really absorb yourself and focus on that, and be present and executing that task is probably something, I'd probably learn from the losses.
Mate, that's a great answer. Looking back on it all, is there anything that you would change?
Well, I said at the start I'd probably change my caricature or my personality, perhaps, because I think that affected people's perception of my ability, of how I played. So one, I'd totally change how I trained. I think I made a lot of mistakes on myself when I thought I had to be bigger. I'd probably work harder on my skill, and I think speed and power, like power to weight ratio, is probably I think is the key to being a back in Super Rugby. And I think I probably got less athletic as I got older. How ironic is that? You get paid to be a professional rugby player, but you're getting less athletic and less skillful. So, and that was my own doing in sense of how I thought about the game. But I think being brave enough to challenge that, if I could have my time again, that'd be the one thing I did differently. And then, so how I trained, my perception to the public, and then probably the most important thing is how I played, having the freedom to pull the trigger and just play footy. Like, you play footy in the backyard with so much freedom, or touch footy and you throw a bad pass or you drop the ball. Whereas I think at Super Rugby, I didn't play that way. So, I got pigeonholed as being very unskillful and one-dimensional, probably because I was within myself a little bit too conservative. So, yeah, I'd probably do those three things differently.
Yeah, I've always thought that, like, rugby's very, once the perception of you's there, it never ever changes.
No, never.
Like, for me, I was not a ball runner, but just say all of a sudden I had the most ball carries in Shute Shield for a season, I would still be seen as not a ball runner.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that it probably messes some guys' careers up. Like, you had an amazing career, and I know the competitor you are, you still have some regrets, but you had an amazing career, and you and I know just as many guys in the Shute Shield who have that perception on them, who could have easily played Super Rugby if they didn't have that on them.
I agree, and I think for you were talking earlier about the Waratahs. I don't know who will get it, but I hope they have a strong flavour to look at club rugby, because there's a lot of really, really good players in club rugby that might be 27 or 28, but I think are really, really good footballers, and they just need an opportunity. And I believe the young guys they've got there are fantastic as well, but I think we can create a really good blend of that, and that will make Australian rugby really strong for a long period of time. So I'm not in the young or the old corner, but the one thing I will say is, looking at cricket, and I learnt this from Trevor Bayliss, is a batsman will hit the ball so differently, yet you never tell a batter how to set up the same way. Like a batter at that level, particularly in BBL or Shield or Test cricket, will have a certain idiosyncrasies, but ultimately it's all about how balanced you are when you hit the ball. And it's really fascinating the role of that coach in cricket. Is it a manager or is it a facilitator as opposed to a technical coach? And so every cricketer hits the ball differently, right? Whereas in rugby, we always try and, you've got to carry the ball this way, or you've got to pass the ball this way. And it's quite interesting, as you just said, about perception, pigeonholing people. And I think we try and put people in these boxes rather than saying, you've got this great skill set, I just want you to be you, and you can add on to people, whereas it's almost like a reductionist. You're not good at this, whereas opposed to building people up. And that's probably, I guess, what really good coaches do, is build people up to do extraordinary things, or things that are above what people think of them. And that's probably, I think, the key to it all.
Do you know the only coach I've ever had that has said what you just said, and I hope he doesn't listen to this, but Todd Loudon, he said that. He said, my job is to get the best out of you. It's not to make you something you're not.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Pete Playford, who was involved with the Stars, who was a great coach, he used to say, you want to have a coach at night time when you go cleaning your teeth or you're going to bed, you're thinking about those moments. And I think, that's what ultimately a coach is someone who can help mentor you. Chucky Stannard, who's a young coach on the up, the way he thinks about the game is just quite incredible. And that's when not that I try not delve into the technical stuff too much, like I'm an SNC now. But you hear things and you think, wow, I wish I thought about that. How you catch the ball and where you position your hands and all of those type of things. And you think, it's quite incredible, really. The great coaches, how they challenge your thinking. And that's coaching, right? For someone to have a comment to you and then you walk away from it and you're still thinking about it, because obviously something within you is computing, thinking, hey, maybe that was an interesting thing. Maybe I should try it. And But be, as you said, in an environment that's not challenging you, that you're failing, but almost like you're going to add on to the skills that you've got.
The amount of times over the last 2 years where I've gone, of course, that makes so much sense, but I'd never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Countless times.
For me, I always thought I was quite fit, but I was never fit enough to get first to see the ball. So if I thought about my career again, it'd be like if I worked harder into position and then you're just seeing pictures of the defence and you gave yourself more time, then you'd be able to make better decisions. Well, you can only give yourself more time if you work harder into position. But I never thought of that. I never thought of being fitter to work harder to see the defence. I always thought being fitter would chase kicks better, would allow me to carry more, would allow me to make more tackles. But probably the one thing I could have done is been more efficient in all of those facets, but being able to see the defence more. And those type of things, I think, when you think about as a coach are what probably separates the really good ones from the good or the not so good.
Any interest in rugby coaching for you?
No. I sort of feel like it's consumer life. I look at it. I was talking to someone the other day, and I look at it. It's like I see it as such a deep art about. I think it's rugby's given me so much, and I've met so many incredible people, and it's been a vehicle for me to do extraordinary things, as you touched upon earlier, around degrees and Waratahs and people I've met. But no, I think it would tip me over the edge. But can stand a part of where I sit in it and love what I do and contribute. But yeah, it's it is, hats off to the coaches that wear that week in, week out. I really enjoy my role because, I wear my heart on my sleeve about winning and losing, and we're interconnected about that. But yeah, I enjoy my weekends a little bit too much for that.
I must admit, I am surprised by how much work goes into coaching. It's way more than I thought, even at a second grade level.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? It's unbelievable.
It's like having another job, honestly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, cutting games, watching, giving feedback, picking teams, managing people, managing structures, working with a backs coach, forwards coach, heads coach.
Review, preview, units, individual. Like I've been a lazy fucker lately, so I'm like, this week I'm going to the gym. I need to start training again. I went to the gym at South for 45 minutes. In 45 minutes, I had 3 rugby-related calls that I had to take.
Yeah. Oh, mate, mate, my kudos to the Shoot Shield coaches, the effort and the time they spend on it. It's quite unbelievable. And, second grade's really important because you're feeding into first grade. Cults is really important because of the future. It's a full-on job,
And let's finish on this. You played Shoot Shield and been involved in Shoot Shield for a really long time. How do you look at what's happening now as opposed to more at the start of you started a little bit before me, but at the start of our career, it was kind of an obscure thing in a way.
Yeah.
And then it's gone through a bit of a innovation, for lack of a better word. And now it's this amazing product and has this following. How do you look at that?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think it's such a good success. I think everyone's so strongly connected to it, and I think it's the blueprint for rugby is that people will follow to their village community, or people want to belong to something, and they want to have an identity or an attachment to things, and that's what gives me hope for the Waratahs is that people want to support club rugby, and it's so strong and vibrant, and there's financial backing and there's infrastructure and resources, and people. The most important thing are the people that give their time to a club. So that's probably that is the heartbeat or antithesis of rugby, and it's probably why you feel connected to it. So I think that's fantastic, and I think as long as that's around, then I think that the future is bright for the game.
Mate, I couldn't agree more. Like I look at Shoot Shield, and I think the reason it's become such a success is that people know the players. So if you're following, when I played for South, I would know a lot of the supporters well enough to have a beer with them after a game. And I feel like that's kind of been lost a little bit with Super Rugby, whereas guys will go straight from Colts sometimes into the Waratahs, and they haven't had this opportunity to let people know who they are. And if I know, if I know you and you're going to play cricket or whatever, I'm more likely to watch it than I am just watching a cricket team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that connection and affinity with people is so important. And I think then that, if you know that person, then they go and play, then you'll all go watch him play. You had your mates from uni that would come and watch you. And I agree with that comment. Very, very true.
I think this rugby's heading in the right direction with some of the stuff that's going on, but we still lag behind other codes. Like the NRL do a really good job of telling the stories of people. And I think rugby's slowly getting there, but we've still got a little way to go, in my view.
No, absolutely.
I guess part of the reason I'm trying to do this is, I had Hoops on. I'd never met Hoops. You hear things. I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to speak to him as if I'm speaking to you, and came across as the coolest, nicest guy. And, I've heard people say different things about him, and since the podcast has come out, they've gone, oh, he seems like a really cool guy. And I don't think anyone's ever really told, well, his social media is like his granddad does it or something. But does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I think if you don't get the opportunity to tell your story, it's hard for people to follow you and have a connection or that relationship with you for sure.
Mate, I'll leave you alone. Thank you so much for this. Absolute pleasure to talk to you as always. If you ever come to a Shute Shield game again, South versus Uni, beers are on me.
Thanks very much, Chubby. I really appreciate it. You're doing a great job.
Mate, I appreciate it so much. Best of luck for the Sevens at the end of the year. I hope it's a good result. And, let's do this again sometime.
Awesome. Thanks very much, mate.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Cheers, Tommy. See you, mate.